Hello everyone, before this video starts, I would appreciate if you guys would leave a like and subscribe, since your support means the world to me and allows me to make these types of videos. Now let's get into the video. I always thought our life on Maple Street was perfectly normal. Looking back, I can see the signs, the tiny clues hidden in the corners of our home, but at the time, nothing seemed out of place. We were the Joneses. Mom, Dad, my little sister Sarah, and me, Ben. Our house was a charming two-story with white siding and blue shutters. A picket fence surrounded our yard, which always seemed greener and more manicured than any other on the block. Mom had a knack for gardening. Her roses were the envy of the neighborhood. To anyone who saw us, we were the epitome of a happy suburban family. Mom was the center of our world. She was a stay-at-home mom who made sure Sarah and I were always cared for. Her days were filled with baking cookies, packing our lunches, and helping with school projects. Dad worked long hours at the law firm downtown, so it was mostly just the three of us at home. The first hint that something was amiss came when I was in third grade. There was a bully in my class named Tommy Reed. He was a head taller than everyone else and had a mean streak a mile wide. He tormented me every day, tripping me in the hallway, knocking books out of my hands, calling me names. It got so bad that I dreaded going to school. One day, after a particularly rough encounter with Tommy, I came home in tears. Mom was in the kitchen, pulling a fresh batch of chocolate chip cookies from the oven. She wiped her hands on her apron and knelt down to my level. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice full of concern. I told her about Tommy, about how he made my life miserable. She hugged me tightly, smoothing my hair and whispering soothing words. "Don't worry, Ben. Everything will be okay." The next day at school, Tommy was absent, and the day after that, a week passed with no sign of him. Then rumors started circulating that Tommy and his family had moved away suddenly in the middle of the night. No one knew why or where they had gone. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Kids moved all the time. But now I can't help but wonder if Mom had something to do with it. Years passed, and life continued on Maple Street. I was in middle school when I first ventured into the attic. It was a hot summer day, and Sarah and I were playing hide and seek. I had exhausted all my usual hiding spots and needed to find a new one. The attic seemed like the perfect place. The attic was dusty and dimly lit, filled with old boxes and forgotten furniture. As I explored, I stumbled upon a large trunk hidden in the corner. It was old and worn, with a heavy padlock securing it shut. My curiosity got the better of me, and I tried to open it, but the lock wouldn't budge. I heard Mom calling us for dinner, so I quickly left the attic, but that trunk stayed on my mind. What could be inside? Why was it locked away? High school brought new challenges and new faces. One of those faces was Jenny Harris. She was in my biology class, and we quickly became friends. Jenny lived a few blocks away, and we often walked home together after school. One evening, Sarah and I were playing in the yard when we heard sirens. A police car sped down our street and stopped in front of the Harris house. Curious, we watched as officers went in and out, their faces grim. Mom called us inside and told us to stay away from the windows. The next day, the news spread that the Harris family had disappeared without a trace. Their house was empty, their car still in the driveway. It was as if they had vanished into thin air. I mentioned the disappearance to Mom, but she brushed it off. "People come and go, Ben. It's nothing to worry about." But it was hard not to worry when it felt like people were disappearing around us. My senior year of high school was when everything started to unravel. I had been accepted into a college out of state, and Mom insisted on helping me pack. We decided to store some of my old things in the attic. While up there, I couldn't resist the temptation to check the trunk again. This time, I noticed something I hadn't before, a small key hidden in the corner of the attic. I picked it up and tried it on the padlock. To my surprise, it fit. The trunk creaked open, revealing a collection of old newspapers, photographs, and notebooks. The newspapers detailed various disappearances in our town over the years. The photographs were of the missing people, including Tommy Reed and the Harris family. The notebooks were filled with detailed observations about each person, their routines, and notes on their disappearances. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized the implications. Mom had been keeping tabs on these people, and they had all disappeared. My hands shook as I closed the trunk, my mind racing. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was consumed with questions and fear. I decided I had to confront Mom. The next morning, while Sarah was at a friend's house and Dad was at work, I approached her in the kitchen. "Mom, I need to talk to you." She looked up from her baking, her eyes soft and kind. "What is it, Ben?" I took a deep breath and told her about the trunk, about the newspapers and photographs. Her face remained calm, but her eyes grew colder with each word. "Ben, you shouldn't have been snooping in the attic," she said, her voice dangerously low. "Mom, what's going on? Why do you have all those things?" She sighed and took off her apron, hanging it on a hook. "Ben, sometimes we have to do things to protect our family, things that others might not understand." "What are you talking about?" I asked, my voice shaking. She stepped closer, her eyes locked on mine. "Everything I've done for you and Sarah, to keep you safe." I took a step back, my heart pounding. "What do you mean?" She reached out and touched my cheek, her hand cold. "You don't need to worry about that, Ben. Just know that I will always protect you, no matter what." After our conversation, I felt more uneasy than ever. I started digging deeper, looking for any clues that could explain what Mom had been doing. I searched through old family records, talked to neighbors, and even visited the library to look up old newspaper articles. The more I found, the more terrified I became. There were patterns, connections between the disappearances and our family. Every few years, someone would vanish, and there was always some link to us, however tenuous. One evening, I overheard Mom on the phone, her voice low and urgent. "Yes, everything is in place. No, they won't find anything. Trust me." My blood ran cold. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what. I couldn't go to the police without concrete evidence, and I didn't want to believe that my own mother was capable of such things. I decided the only way to protect myself and Sarah was to leave. I packed a bag with essentials and some money I had saved up. I wrote a note to Sarah, telling her to meet me at our secret spot in the woods behind the school. That night I waited in the dark, my heart pounding. Sarah arrived, her eyes wide with confusion and fear. "What's going on, Ben?" "We have to go, Sarah. We're not safe here." She looked back towards our house, then at me. "What about Mom and Dad?" "We can't trust them," I said, my voice breaking. "We just need to get away." She nodded and we slipped into the shadows, leaving Maple Street behind. We found a small town a few hours away and started fresh. It wasn't easy, but we managed. I took odd jobs to support us, and Sarah continued her schooling. We kept a low profile, never staying in one place too long. Years passed, and we built a new life for ourselves. But the memories of Maple Street and the horrors hidden there never left us. We kept our secrets, always looking over our shoulders, never fully trusting anyone. One day I received a letter with no return address. Inside was a single photograph of Mom standing in front of our old house on Maple Street. Written on the back were the words, "Come home." I knew what it meant. It was time to face the past, to confront the truth once and for all. I showed the letter to Sarah, and together we decided to return to Maple Street. We arrived at night, the house looking just as it had when we left. We crept inside, finding it eerily quiet. As we explored, we found the trunk in the attic, still unlocked. This time, I wasn't afraid to look inside. We found more photographs, more notes, and at the bottom, a letter addressed to me. "Ben, if you're reading this, it means you've come back. I'm sorry for everything. I did what I had to do to protect you and Sarah. Please understand that I love you both more than anything in this world." "Mom?" We heard a noise downstairs and our hearts pounded in unison. We crept down the stairs, finding Mom standing in the kitchen, just as she always had. She looked older, more worn, but her eyes were the same. "Ben, Sarah," she said softly, "I knew you'd come back." "We know what you did," I said, my voice shaking. "We know everything." She nodded, tears in her eyes. "I did it for you, to keep you safe." "We can't stay here," Sarah said, her voice trembling. "We can't live like this." Mom reached out to us, her hands trembling. "Please, just understand. Everything I did out of love." We stepped back. the weight of her words crashing down on us. We couldn't stay, but we couldn't forget either. We turned and left the house, the door closing on the past and the horrors it held. We never went back to Maple Street. We moved far away, started new lives, but the memories lingered. We kept our secrets, but we found a way to move forward together. In the end, we realized that sometimes the ones who love us the most can also be the ones who hurt us the deepest. And while we couldn't change the past, we could choose how to live our future. The decision to leave Maple Street was the most difficult and the easiest thing we ever did. Each step away from that house felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. Yet the burden of the secrets we carried grew heavier with each passing day. Sarah and I settled into a routine in our new town. We avoided making close friends, never stayed in one place for too long, and kept our heads down. Trust became a rare commodity, and we learned to rely on each other more than ever. One night after Sarah had gone to bed, I sat at the kitchen table, the photograph of Mom and the old house spread out in front of me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to uncover, more to understand about what had driven Mom to such lengths. The letter she had left haunted me, the love and madness intertwined within her words. Months turned into years, and while the memories of Maple Street never faded, they dulled into the background of our new lives. Sarah excelled in school, her resilience a testament to her strength. I worked multiple jobs to support us, always looking over my shoulder, expecting the past to catch up with us. Then one day, it did. A man appeared at our door, tall and gaunt, with a face that seemed familiar yet foreign. He introduced himself as Detective Mark Reynolds, a private investigator hired to look into the disappearances on Maple Street. "I need to talk to you about your mother," he said, his voice steady but filled with underlying tension. I invited him in, my heart pounding. Sarah watched from the kitchen, her eyes wide with fear and curiosity. Detective Reynolds laid out a file on the table, filled with photographs, notes, and clippings about the missing people. "Your mother was a person of interest in several cases, but there was never enough evidence to link her directly. Until now." Detective Reynolds revealed a series of connections we had missed. There were more disappearances than we had known about, stretching back decades. Each one had some tenuous link to our family, whether it was a distant neighbor, a casual acquaintance, or a local figure who had crossed paths with Mom. "What did you find?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He showed us a series of journal entries, written in a delicate, familiar script. Mom's handwriting. They detailed her observations, her growing paranoia about the threats to our family, and ultimately her justifications for removing those threats. "She believed she was protecting you," Reynolds said, "but she was deeply disturbed. Her love for you and your sister twisted into something dangerous. The revelations shattered any lingering illusions I had about our past. Mom's actions, while driven by a warped sense of love, had caused untold suffering. The weight of her crimes settled heavily on my conscience." Sarah and I spent days poring over the files, trying to make sense of it all. We debated what to do next, whether to go public with the information or to continue hiding from the shadows of our past. In the end, we decided that the truth needed to be confronted. We couldn't live in fear forever, and the victims deserved justice. With Detective Reynolds' help, we compiled the evidence and went to the authorities. The ensuing investigation was exhaustive and grueling. Mom was found and brought in for questioning. The trial that followed was a media sensation. Our family secrets laid bare for the world to see. Mom remained composed throughout, her demeanor calm and unwavering, even as the damning evidence mounted against her. In court, she spoke of her love for us, her desire to keep us safe, and how she had seen threats where others saw none. Her words were both chilling and heartbreaking, revealing the depths of her delusion. The jury found Mom guilty on multiple counts of murder and abduction. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict brought a sense of closure, but it didn't erase the scars left by her actions. Sarah and I tried to move on, but the legacy of Maple Street lingered. We attended therapy sessions, trying to untangle the web of emotions that had ensnared us. Trust remained a fragile thing, but we slowly began to rebuild our lives. Our story became a cautionary tale, a reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind the facade of a perfect family. We wrote a book about our experiences, hoping to shed light on the complexities of mental illness and the impact of untreated trauma. In sharing our story, we found a sense of purpose. We spoke at schools and community centers, advocating for mental health awareness and the importance of seeking help before it's too late. Years passed, and the wounds began to heal. Sarah went on to become a psychologist, driven by a desire to help others navigate their own struggles. I pursued a career in writing, using my words to explore the human condition and the fine line between love and madness. One day, I received a letter from Mom, sent from the prison where she would spend the rest of her days. In it, she spoke of her love for us, her regrets, and her hope that we had found peace. "I know I can never undo what I've done," she wrote, "but please know that I always loved you and I always will." Reading Mom's letter, I felt a mixture of emotions: anger, sorrow, and a bittersweet sense of closure. I realized that while we couldn't change the past, we could choose how to move forward. Holding on to the pain would only continue to give it power over us. Sarah and I visited Mom in prison. It was a difficult and emotional meeting, but it allowed us to confront our past and say the things we had left unsaid for so long. Mom looked older, frailer, but her eyes still held that familiar warmth and sadness. "I'm so sorry," she said, tears streaming down her face. "I wish I could take it all back." "We know, Mom," I replied, my voice choked with emotion. "We know." Leaving the prison, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. We had faced our past and come out the other side. It wasn't a happy ending, but it was a step towards healing. Sarah and I returned to our lives, determined to honor the memory of those who had been lost and to build a future free from the shadows of Maple Street. We found strength in each other and in the knowledge that we had survived. Our journey taught us that love can be both a source of great strength and great pain. It's a complex and powerful emotion that can drive people to do unimaginable things. We learned to cherish the good moments and to forgive, even when it seemed impossible. We established a foundation in memory of the victims, dedicated to supporting families affected by mental illness and advocating for better mental health care. It was our way of turning a dark chapter of our lives into something positive, something that could help others. As we moved forward, we found that the pain of the past slowly faded, replaced by a sense of purpose and hope. We built new memories, new traditions, and a new understanding of what it means to be a family. Our lives were forever changed by the events on Maple Street, but we refused to let them define us. We chose to write our own story, one of resilience, forgiveness, and the unbreakable bond between siblings. And so we did. Looking back, it's hard to believe all that we went through. The quiet house on Maple Street, once a symbol of normalcy and security, had hidden a darkness we could never have imagined. But from that darkness, we found a strength within ourselves and each other that we never knew existed. Our journey wasn't easy, and the scars will always be there, but we learned that it's possible to move forward, to find light even in the darkest of times. The past will always be a part of us, but it doesn't have to define our future. We built a life filled with love, purpose, and hope, and in that, we found our peace. After the trial, Sarah had a hard time adjusting. She was younger than me, and the events took a toll on her mental health. Nightmares plagued her sleep, and she often woke up screaming. I did my best to comfort her, but I knew she needed professional help. We found a therapist who specialized in trauma, and Sarah began to make progress. She learned coping mechanisms and slowly started to open up about her fears and anxieties. It was a long road, but with time and patience, she began to heal. While Sarah was in therapy, I struggled with my own demons. Guilt gnawed at me, making it hard to sleep. I replayed the events over and over in my mind, wondering if there was something I could have done to prevent it all. I too sought help. Talking to a therapist helped me understand that the burden wasn't mine to carry alone. Mom's actions were her own, driven by her mental illness, and I couldn't have changed that. The trial brought a media storm that was overwhelming. Reporters camped outside our door, eager for any scrap of information. The constant attention made it hard to focus on healing. We eventually moved to a quieter town, hoping to escape the spotlight. It took a while, but the media eventually moved on to other stories. The quiet was a welcome change, giving us the space we needed to heal. Dad had been a distant figure throughout our ordeal, his work keeping him away from home. After the trial, he reached out, wanting to reconnect. It was awkward at first, but we slowly began to rebuild our relationship. He apologized for not being there for us, explaining that he had been dealing with his own guilt and shame. Understanding his perspective helped us forgive him, and we began to work on being a family again. The foundation we established in memory of the victims quickly gained support. People from all over the country reached out, sharing their own stories and offering donations. We used the funds to provide resources for families dealing with mental illness, creating a network of support. Our work with the foundation gave us a sense of purpose, helping to transform our pain into something positive. It didn't erase the past, but it helped us feel like we were making a difference. Years later, Sarah and I decided to visit Maple Street one last time. The house had been sold and a new family lived there. We stood outside, looking at the place where our lives had changed forever. It was a bittersweet moment, filled with memories, both good and bad. We didn't go inside, but just being there gave us a sense of closure. We knew that our past would always be a part of us, but we were ready to move forward. With time, our lives settled into a new normal. We found joy in the small things: Sarah's graduation, my first book being published, the friendships we slowly built in our new town. We learned to trust again, to open our hearts to the possibility of happiness. Our journey had been long and painful, but it had also made us stronger. We knew that no matter what the future held, we would face it together. Forgiving Mom was the hardest thing we ever did. It didn't happen all at once, but gradually as we came to understand the depth of her illness and her twisted sense of love. Forgiving her didn't mean forgetting what she had done, but it allowed us to let go of the anger and bitterness. We visited her in prison from time to time, each meeting a step towards healing. She aged rapidly, the weight of her actions bearing down on her. In her eyes, we saw both the mother we had loved and the stranger who had committed unspeakable acts. Despite everything, we learned to embrace life. We traveled, explored new hobbies, and allowed ourselves to dream again. The shadows of Maple Street would always be there, but they no longer defined us. Sarah found love, getting married to a kind, understanding man who knew about our past but didn't let it overshadow their future. I continued to write, my stories filled with the complexities of the human condition. We built a future filled with hope and resilience. Our experiences shaped us, but they didn't break us. We honored the memories of those who had been lost by living our lives to the fullest. As we looked ahead, we knew there would be challenges, but we also knew we had the strength to face them. Our story was one of survival, of finding light in the darkest of times, and of the unbreakable bond between siblings. In the end, we realized that life is a series of chapters, each one building on the last. Our past was a part of us, but it didn't define our future. We had the power to write our own story, and we chose to fill it with love, hope, and the unending resilience of the human spirit. Thank you for watching the video fully. Please hit the like and subscribe button, since I could not make these videos without your support, and it means the world to me.